Welcome into Montgomery and Company. I'm your host, Renee Montgomery. Let's get it, y'all. We back at it, and y'all already know it's voting time, okay? So I'm going to talk to y'all like it's game time then. I'm going to lean in as if we're in the locker room before a big game because I've been in those moments where it's like, this is the moment. There's no second chance. There's no day after today. This is the last game of the season. That's kind of how I feel like election day is. I mean, we have weeks now in between the actual election day, but understanding the importance of it is where I'm going with this because everybody loves a good sports playing. Sports is a great way to navigate life. So I'm going to talk about voting, and you need your voting game plan, okay? Like the same way my game plan is every game day, I go to shoot around, I come home, I got to take a nap. Then there's certain foods that I eat to get my body and my mind in the right place, carb heavy, right? So your voting game plan, what is it? What are you going to do? You're going to go vote early because if you know you don't like crowds, don't wait until the day to vote then and be stuck in a crowd and be mad and then be like, I should have never voted in the first place. Know yourself, okay? Have your game plan. If you don't want to go by yourself, go grab a friend, grab your family members, grab a coworker. Listen, I don't know, a coworker, I don't know if you should mix that because it's one of those times, but this is a time where you have to have an idea. You have to have an idea of who you want to vote for and what you want to do. Because imagine I go to the big game. Imagine I pull up and I don't have no plan. I don't know the other team. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know what their game plan is against me. Again, sports explaining life. That would be as crazy as you going to the polls and you didn't do any research. Know who you want to vote for. What is important to you? I can't decide what's important to you, but I think having a game plan of, all right, if I'm a woman, I want to have control of anything that's going on with my body. I don't want nobody to tell me what I can do with my body. That's a game plan. You should find out what candidate allows you to have control of your body, what candidate doesn't. Whatever issues are important, make those important in your game plan. So this is one of those times, they say hide your wife, hide your kids, hide everybody. Don't hide your wife. Don't hide your kids, especially if it's Gen Z. And I'm going to get into a stat later. But everybody, this feels like a family affair at this point. Like these issues are family issues. These issues are individual issues. There's a lot of issues on the table. And I do understand it's like we're all not enthusiasts of politics. It's not like we're all excited to see all these commercials. By the way, I'm Kamala Harris and I approve this message. I'm you know who, and I approve that. I get it. It can get tiring. It's like every 4 years, yes, we have to go through this. And then sometimes in between, because you should vote local. But the point is, y'all, come on, man. We can't come to the big game not ready. You got to be with me shooting in the gym. I'm just saying. So whether it's you taking your kids, your cousin, your nieces, your nephews, so you can show them how important this big game is, you're going to have to do that. It's uncomfortable to all of us. And if you're unable to participate in early voting, make sure you make time on election day. Mail-in voting, you're going to have to do what it takes to win the game. I don't care. I'm not saying who you should vote for, but you got to show up, baby. We need everybody in the game. That's all I'm saying. So for you to be in the game, that means you got to cast your vote. All right. So that's all I got. But I also want to leave you with a few voting stats because you know me, I'm sports and stats mean something to me. Okay. So women have registered and voted at higher rates than men every presidential election since 1980s. So ladies, let's get information. We already know what it is. 8 million Gen Z voters became eligible to vote this year. Yes, you heard that right. 8 million Gen Z voters. So listen, I'm hollering at y'all because this is your first time. So you may not have been in the big game before. Take it from me. I've done it. You have to be prepared. Get a game plan. Make your voice loud in the booth. You don't have to tell nobody who you voted for. I know Gen Z, you might be uncomfortable talking politics. You're like, you don't have to tell nobody else what your thoughts are. Talk in the booth, okay? And then nearly 64% of voters say that they have given a lot of thought to the candidates who are running for the 2024 presidential election. Now, I love that. 64%. I'm an athlete. If somebody's shooting 64%, baby, is it Steph Curry? Like that's a sniper type. That's a shooter, okay? So 64% of people say that they're thinking about which candidate And that's all I ask. Talk to somebody about it. Do you have a coach in your life? I'm not your coach. I'm just pretending to be your coach. I'm trying to get you pumped up. The big day is coming, all right? So get out, vote. This year is a huge year. Every election is a huge year, but it's not just a huge year for the presidential election, but it's also a huge deal for local elections. Your judges. I know y'all are starting to see now situations that happen on the internet where you're like, how can this be? Your judges, the things that you can vote on that we don't talk about a lot, you can vote on those things. So these elections are important. Make your voice heard. All right, so that brings me to my MVP of the week. And I'm going to keep the whole sports splaining thing going on because we're still in the locker room and I'm going to still talk to y'all like we are. So my MVP of the week is President Biden. And everybody, you might be like, oh goodness, because I saw Call Her Daddy podcast lost like 10,000 subscribers instantly, something of that nature when she interviewed VP Harris. This is not about President Biden, the human. So if you don't like his politics and everything, that's not what it's about. Listen to why he's the MVP of the week. So in sports, sometimes you have players that were great. They were stars. And sometimes stars, Father Time is undefeated. We love Father Prime, but then after that comes Father Time, and that star may not shine as bright as they used to. It's not saying that star is not useful, but that star is the vet on the team. And sometimes in these situations in sports, you have a vet that may be like, you know what, I'm going to have to give up my spot. I don't necessarily want to, but I might have to retire. I think that, I don't have the same. It's hard for an athlete to say these things, so they might not actually say it, but when your time has come. When you won't have that same pickup that you used to. That you ain't as spry as you used to. When it takes you multiple days instead of one day to recover. So there comes a point in every athlete's life where you understand that, it might be time for me to hang up my kicks. That's what President Biden did in a sense of he wanted to do what was best for the team. In this instance, the team is us. It's America. And this vet, because again, I'm sports spanning, a vet on the team is, the experienced player. We had an experienced vet that could have stayed in their spot because you're never going to make a superstar leave. You're never going to force a superstar out. You hope that they bow out gracefully. And that's exactly what President Biden did, where he gave up his spot for the betterment of the team. And now we have VP Harris running in his place. That's not easy to do. In sports, they don't go down without a fight. They're like, no, I'm going to be a starter. What you mean coming off the bench? I'm not coming off the bench. You know who I am? That's some athletes. So I just know that in the sports world, for President Biden to do what he did for us, because who gives up the most powerful position in the world? Like, who does that? Who does that without having to do that? So shouts to him. I'm giving President Biden my MVP of the week. So listen, if you know better, do better. And we all know better, and that means to go vote. But I digress. Let's get into this episode, y'all. We'll be back with more Montgomery and Company. Welcome back to Montgomery and Company. Listen, today we are talking to community organizer and activist, but friend of the show, Nse Ufot. Thank you for joining us, Nse.
Hello, Renee.
Let's go. Let's go.
I'm so happy to be here.
Listen, okay, so congratulations on everything, by the way, since we last spoke. This is our voting episode, and we here in Atlanta, Georgia, and in just a short amount of time, we got a lot going on. We're away from Election Day, all these other things, but I know that you are having global conversations. I remember before when we talked, you connected the community to the civics. That makes sense. So I'm just curious because there's a lot of people, especially this election, that have the question of like, why should they even vote? Does their vote matter? Are both candidates not a good option? Can you just give your thoughts on those types of questions and why it does?
Yeah, I think that, so one, hi, and so thank you. And this question is so timely. One, because it's a conversation that a lot of people are having. I tend to think about voting or the vote as a tool. And it's one of the tools that we have in our tool belt to build the world that we want to live in. Full stop, right? That, from how, we don't want poop in the water that we drink, right? So having municipal leaders, right, who care about the cleanliness of the water that we drink and the air that we breathe feels really, really important. We are both based in Georgia where the minimum wage is $5.15 an
Wow.
hour. Right? So you can't raise a family on $5.15 an hour, even if you work full time, let alone taking care of yourself. And so that is governed by our state legislature, right? We are survivors of Hurricane Helene, and we have people in Florida who survived Milton. And the truth of the matter is that as the earth gets hotter and the ocean keeps boiling, that we're going to have more extreme climate events. So how we move as people, how we take care of the earth that we're in, how we fund our schools, how many hospital beds are allocated for a community, like all of that is governed by our politics. And so I believe that there's a role for everybody to play in shaping how our cities work, our counties, and our government functions, and also just building the world that we want to live in. Like, they work for us. And I think that when people think that you just vote, you're hiring a representative to do a job, and then we should make sure that they're doing that job. And if not, fire them.
I love that. See, this is what I like about how you make it basic. Like, a lot of people, when they think about politics, some people will say, like, I'm not into politics, but they don't realize it's like, how can you not be into politics? So I like how you're breaking it down little by little. Now, us both living here in Georgia, I don't know, but it feels like every year Georgia is a big topic of discussion in politics. Why do you feel like that feels that way? I mean, is it just because I live here now, or is there has Georgia started to become more of a conversation nationally?
No, I think, both, right? So Georgia is definitely starting to become a conversation nationally. And I think a lot of it, Georgians are more aware of their influence on national elections because of the way that our elections are conducted. What I will also say is, I think that some of it is culture too. The idea that the cradle of the civil rights movement is here, it's the home and the birthplace of Martin Luther King, et cetera. I'm an Atlanta public school graduate. So,
Okay,
our first language is,
APS.
right. So our first language is MLK quotes. But I think that, in terms of when you look at the fights and the sort of the way our politics and government play out, that in a lot of ways it feels like the sort of descendants of the civil rights movement, and quite frankly, the descendants of the Klan, find themselves publicly fighting for power and fighting for the future of Georgia. No. I think that is that it's a story that a lot of Americans can resonate with. Here's the other thing. I will also say that at a time where we were in the middle of a global health crisis, and many of us felt like our leaders in government had abandoned us, that we had professional athletes engaging in collective action, communicating that they were a part of our community, that they had opinions about what was happening, and again took brave and bold action that sort of served as a signal and was one of the sort of many points that was just pushing against, again, the history of Jim Crowe in the South, and the history of segregation in the South, and the history of voter suppression, that there was so many examples of a multiracial coalition of people doing what they could with what they had to figure out how to take care of themselves and how to take care of each other. And so that's instructive, not just for Georgia and not just for elections, but how we do democracy
exactly
going forward.
Yeah, no, I love that. This is I'm trying to get the questions that I see on Twitter, and I'll get the questions that I think, because you talked about voter suppression. A lot of people don't even understand what that term can mean. So what, for people that are oh, here we go again with these types of words, voter suppression, what's a real life civics community connection to voter suppression? What is that?
Yeah. I mean, listen, you're an athlete, right? You understand that there are games and the people with the most points win, right? The team with the most points win. It's the same thing with elections. The party with the most votes or the candidate with the most votes wins. And when you look at not only just the history of Georgia, but the history of the United States, like who can vote and whose votes count has long been a contested part of like our government. We started a long time ago with just white male property owners, right? Like you could be white and male, but if you didn't own property, you couldn't vote. And then they expanded that just to include white men. Then they expanded it to include men. That included Black men and other men of color. And then they sort of took that back, right? And then there was more fights. And then in 1920, with the 19th Amendment, women got the right to vote, right? And then it was another like 40 years before the Civil Rights Act of 1965 was passed. And so at its core, voter suppression is putting your thumb on the scale, cheating, doing all of the things that make it difficult for another person to cast their ballot and to have that ballot counted. So what does that look like? Some people think that that's Bubba on the back of a pickup truck trying to intimidate Black voters, right? And while that certainly still happens, yes, even in the year of our Lord 2024, that what it also looks like is purges, right? Where you purge the roles that, if someone is suspected of moving, or if you didn't vote in the last election, that you can be purged from a state's voter rolls. Georgia is one of the states is very aggressive with this. And so there's that, listen, 8 hours waiting in line to vote is a suppression tactic, right? Like, I think some of us are fortunate to, be self-employed or to have understanding employers, but there's no like law that requires an employer to give you time off to vote on election day. So if you are at a precinct where in a historically Black neighborhood where the lines are crazy, 4, 5, 6 hours on your feet is a suppression tactic.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good way to break it down, because then people gonna realize, why am I standing here this long? This is a tactic. They want you to leave. By the way, keep standing in line. Now we know that Gen Z, there's a large amount of young voters that's about to activate this year. I mean, they turning 18, they coming in, they're getting information. A lot of them have never been a part of this process before. They don't really have like the passion for politics, but they also are like, hey, listen, there are some things I care about. How do people in general decipher or pick how to find information, how to understand what's misinformation, how to get the information that they need to make the choice that they make?
Right. Well, I mean, I'm going to say just media literacy is really important. A couple things. So the people who are going to be voting for the first time in this election were born in 2006.
Wow.
Right? Okay, so we're going to start with that. That they were born in 2006. Easily 90% of them get their information about government, politics, elections, and the world around us online.
Yep.
And so I think that many of us in this moment should consider ourselves influencers, and influencers with the people that are in our sphere, right? The young folks that are in our lives, with the people who follow us on our pages, the people who are in community, the churches, mosques, synagogues, right? Folks who live in your neighborhood that, using your platform, using your influence to disseminate truthful information feels really, really important. I think that, we are making sure that we're collecting resources, that you send people to the candidates' websites and to the parties' websites for information. But there are also people, I would absolutely follow you. I mean, I do. One, right? But in terms of just information about what's happening with the world around us, I think that Gen Z is really good at that. I would also say that there is, people use this word derogatorily, but like there is a wokeness. There's a, sort of, a level of understanding. There's a level of inquiry and just questioning why things are the way they are that's coming from Gen Z that I love. It challenges me. Here I am thinking that I am progressive and that my politics show up, and staff have run down on me, right? Younger staff, about the ways in which things can be different, the nature of work. They're questioning everything. Part of it is because, they're seeing millennials not retiring, not having the same job for 30 years. Again, they're seeing these once in a century, once every 1,000-year floods happening 2 or 3 times a year. Yeah. And they're like, hold on now. We still got to live here. And so, while I'm not going to put the burden of saving American democracy on Gen Z, I am encouraged by the increase in their registration rates. I'm encouraged by the hard questions that they're asking and the demands that they're making. And I mean, again, just for Georgia, but we will soon see what it looks like in other states. Georgia voters and young voters in particular have been breaking records since, the first day of early voting. The first day of early voting in Georgia, over 300,000 people showed up to vote.
Crazy.
Right? That's double what we saw in 2020. Wow. We only saw like 135,000 people show up by the first day to vote in 2020. So... And that was a high water mark for us. So I love that this trend is continuing. I love the contribution that Gen Z is making. And it's making Georgia more competitive. Ain't no permanent seats. Like, everybody needs to sing for their supper.
Let's go.
And Georgia, listen. Less than a decade ago, over 80% of the seats in the Georgia state legislature were uncontested. Wow. Meaning that people didn't even have another person from the other party to run against them, right? And now everything is contested. Ain't no red counties, ain't no red seats, blue seats. Like, everybody is having to run for their seat in a real way. And that's another sort of new feature that we're seeing in Georgia. And I think it's also why we keep being in the national news.
I love that. Let's get ready to rumble. Yeah, you ain't just writing your name like you want this position and then all of a sudden you got it. You talked about the internet. And I think that now with the internet, everything is more connected. We see global situations. We see global conflict. We see global war. Everything. We're seeing it now live the moment it happens. Like, Twitter is my news feed, for better or for worse. Like, that is where I get a lot of my information as well. And so with that, I know that you're traveling internationally, helping campaigns as well as domestically. What kind of conversations do you see that's similar in the politics and civics and community that's the same here in America, that's the same globally as well?
Listen, I think that Gen Z globally wants to see about their elders. And they have questions. I think that there is sort of the generational pull into the future. I think that climate is real, because what's also happening is climate is creating refugees, right? That we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina next year.
Wow. The 20th?
And
it's been 20th. That long?
Absolutely. Wow. And when you think about the number of people that live in Atlanta that are from New Orleans, that relocated, the people in Houston who relocated because of Hurricane Katrina, I think that that's happening in countries all over the world. You think about the Caribbean, you're in the middle of water. Wow, you're in the middle of the ocean, right? And so thinking about, what that means for immigration, but also Floridians, Californians, the wildlife, Mississippians. Mississippi has over $12 billion climate events every year. That's just one state in the United States. And then to multiply that by the number of countries, again, across the world. So the air don't respect borders. The water don't respect borders. And so the international cooperation that's required, I've been in a lot of those spaces at the intersection of politics, governments, and governing and climate. And I also think that trends about women and femmes and women's leadership that, working in Africa, 54 countries in Africa, only like a dozen have had women heads of state. Half of them were the widows of somebody who died while he was in office, right? Mexico just elected its first woman president a couple weeks ago. The United States is on the verge of electing its first woman president. And many countries around the world are looking at women's leadership as we think about like how to bring half of the world's population right into the conversation, into the room.
Because that's crazy, right? Like we're trying to, like, we're not just saying this is a small margin that would be represented. We're talking about literally half of the whole population, and hearing that, like, not only us, which we sometimes can feel progressive as a nation, but then we ride along with everybody else with never having a woman in the most powerful position in America. It's kind of wild to think that you like literally said in the year of 2024, it's kind of wild to think.
Absolutely. And we know that gender doesn't have anything to do with leadership ability, right? That we know that gender doesn't have anything to do with strength. And the ability to be strategic, right? And so, again, the fact that most of the world's countries have never had women leadership at the executive level is something that's getting addressed right now. And again, the United States is not the only place where it's happening. And that's also really exciting. I've been doing a lot of work in South Africa. And so it's also, I think that we're seeing in the US, that we're seeing globally, is the fact that like history may not exactly repeat itself, but that it rhymes. So 1994, Nelson Mandela was elected as South Africa's like first Black president. And so 2024, fast forward 30 years, like questions about the role of the ANC, the parties, and is just having a Black face enough to, is it representative of enough progress for Black South Africans in this moment when you think about economic challenges and da-da-da-da-da? And so those are real questions that like people are asking of VP Harris in this moment as well. And so like the questions of identity, the questions of solidarity, and also fighting fascism, racism, and genocide. That the world has been in this place before. And so I think that we all would benefit from learning our lessons from the past.
Definitely. I like that you said it may not repeat, but it rhymes. That's lit. Question. So we talked about the 8 hours that you might have to stand in line, and yes, you should stand in line, but if they are standing in line, like what's a survival kit? Like what should they bring? What should they need on that day of voting?
Listen, snacks, water. But here's what you should do is vote early. Right. So because they have yet to take that right away from us, not for lack of trying, though. Georgians have, and people all across the country have the ability to vote early. And so if there is a way for you to mail in your ballot or drop your ballot off at a drop box or hand it in to a county board of elections official before election day, we're encouraging folks to do that. Those ballots get counted first. It makes you available to do things on election day. But you can also have that peace of mind, knowing that while we continue to do other things to try to build the world we want to live in, at the very least, you know that your vote has been cast. And so we're encouraging people to vote early. But if you find yourself voting on election day, definitely bring some snacks, definitely bring some water. You can also bring a stadium chair for any sports parents out here.
I know we got some listening. I know we got some sports parents listening right now.
Absolutely. Bring a stadium chair. But we're hoping that is not what is required in order to show up and do your civic duty this year. But yeah, early voting is definitely going to help with that.
All right, so my last question, first comment, amazing what you do. Like, I'm serious. Like, we've talked to you before when you was turning up CEO of the New Georgia Project, did record numbers, did record things, and then went on to internationally do the same thing. So first of all, shouts to you, because how we connect this conversation to real life, I think, is what's going to get people engaged. When you hear the word politics, automatically certain people's ears cut off. There's commercials on TV, there's ads on the radio, and almost sometimes it can feel like people just want to just mute out the noise. Is there a way to keep your peace, but also still be engaged? Because there's a group that like, yeah, I'm registered to vote, I just don't want to hear about it all the time. Is there a way to do both? Basically, you know, can we get you a girl that can do both? Is there a way to do both?
100%. And for me, it is organization, right? It's solidarity is our superpower. A lot of times, listen, in America, we love our superhero narratives. We love our Messiah narratives, right? Like this one person who did this heroic thing and like changed the course of history. And I'm not knocking that, right? But when we think about like the long arc of the moral universe, individuals get tired. Yeah. Individuals, they put targets on individuals' backs and can get individuals up out of the paint. That our strength and our safety and our strategy and protection come in numbers, right? I think about, okay, not to play old records, but it's still relevant and it's still a bop. Think about the 2020 Dream Team.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Imagine the target on one's back if it was just one person that was like, hey, our boss is running for an office, but we believe that her opponent is the best person for America in this moment. They would have fried you as an individual. Facts. Right? But the collective, right? Taking action, being bold together, like that's going to have to happen over and over and over again. So I know that there are things that people care about. There are things that you can't stand to see happen and you want to see them change. Or there's a thing that you want for yourself or your family or your community that you care very deeply about it and you're willing to put feet in streets or volunteer or put some in the collection plate. That it is solidarity is our superpower, right? That everybody ain't got to do all the things all the time. That you do what you can, when you can, with what you have, and with your people who share your values. And that's how we move the ball forward. That's how we make forward progress. And that's how you do both, right? Because I subscribe to the Georgia Mass Choir. I'm a PK, right? Okay. So the Georgia Mass Choir theory of organizing, which is, listen, everybody is holding their individual note, right? So that one person needs to drop out because of, I can't make choir rehearsal because of competing personal or professional obligations. You know that there's still going to be choir rehearsal. And you know that the altos, the tenors, right, and the sopranos are going to be all doing their part. So if me and my little, I don't even know what I am. Like, I was like, contralto? That feels like a real word. Contralto. Right. It's giving Macy Gray on a bad day.
I can see that, though. A little raspy.
On a bad day, though. Like Macy Gray on a bad day after hookah in Atlanta.
Okay. Now you talking ATL. Now you talking. You got the green background. We know that background. That's very ATL of you. Okay.
All I need is some lamb chops and a Hennessy margarita.
And you got the whole starter pack.
Welcome to ATL.
Let's go. No, I love that. Okay, Nse, love how you break it down. Before you go, we want to play a little game, have a little fun, 60-second shot clock, quick questions, quick hitters. You ready to do a little something?
Okay. All right.
All right, we got 60 on the clock. Yep. All right. Okay. So, Nse, what's a sport you can play really well?
Ooh, water polo.
Excuse me? What's a sport that you're really bad at?
Ooh, golf.
Feel you. Same. If you could have one sports superpower, what would it be?
one sports superpower.
Yep.
Oh, I want like the wettest J's of all time. Like I want like no miss jumpers. Like, yeah.
I like that. That's a good one. I like that. All right. If you could brag about beating one athlete at any sport, what would it be? Or who would it be? Who would that athlete be?
Oh, I mean, it would have to be real. And I don't know. I mean, elite athletes. Let me think.
Who would you,
Beating
if you had your
Usain Bolt?
superpower? Remember, you got your, okay. Oh, I heard that. Did you see
Oh,
this?
you know what? I want like a 3-point shooting competition with my never miss a jumper superpower. Me and Steph Curry. Let's go.
Okay. Because if you got a wetter jumper than Steph Curry, I mean, night. Okay.
Right. Let's go.
What would be, this is your last question. What would be your walkout theme song?
Oh.
Why you start?
Listen, because I'm from Atlanta and my options are ratchet and ratcheter. But I really feel this way. Bone crusher.
Oh.
Never scared.
I ain't never scared. What? I ain't never. Oh, yes. Listen, I love that. All right. Thank you so much for joining us here at MoCo. Please, y'all, if y'all love the conversation, see people breaking it down, make sure to follow Nse at THE, the Nse Ufot. And I'm going to spell it out just so y'all know. THENSE UFOT. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Come on, man. Follow her on IG. Say what's up. And y'all stay tuned for more Montgomery and Company. All right, y'all. Welcome back to MoCo Family Business. As you guys know, I'm always happy to welcome in the MoCo crew. So we got the wifey, Sirena, the EP. We got my sister calling in from Maryland. What up, Cole? And then we got Snooker Booker calling in from West Virginia. Mountain Mama. So we in this thing, y'all, okay? So let's get into it because we have some people that want some advice, you know, like there's generations here, there's different backgrounds here, as you guys know. And so we like to give our input. You know, we mind our business, but when y'all give us your thoughts, that makes it our family business. And so this week we're going to check out the MoCo mailbag to see what they got for us. And as you guys know, it's vote week. So it's only right that someone wrote in asking about that. So it says, "Dear MoCo, my sister has been putting pressure on me about voting, but I'm not so sure. With a lot of what's going on in America, I'm not sure my vote even is that important. And this election feels heavy with information and with misinformation. Is my sister right? Should I make my voice heard or should I just mind my own business? Signed, I don't know."
Signed, I don't know. I like that.
What do y'all think? I mean, it's tough because it's like, of course, y'all know that. I'm just going to start it out. Of course, we think that you should make your voice heard, but I do know that a lot of people feel this way. They're like, look, I feel like I'm independent in a sense of I'm down the middle. I don't want to have to choose a side. And so I feel like I hear this a lot with the younger gen, really, that are kind of like, I'm not really into politics.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. If they're not into politics, I mean, you know, they're really kind of, I don't want to say ignorant, but just not knowledgeable about the system, because how would the people know what you're into if you don't vote? Because that's where you send your message to the people who do have some say into what goes on. So no one knows about you because you're sitting at home on your yah-yah and talking all that, you know, stuff to your neighbors and to maybe your family and your friends. And you should be out there, you know, if you want it to be heard, you need to go out there to the voting booth and say something, because if you don't say something, people won't know. That's all I got to say about it.
That's right.
I have a different opinion.
What's your opinion, Cole?
If you are undecided, stay home. We don't need. No, I'm being dead serious because now I'm tired. I'm tired of this. We have been fighting a very crazy fight for the last 8 years. If in the last 8 years you have not decided how you're living, whether you like it or not, if you have not made a decision whether what's going on in this country affected you negatively or positively, and which term it affected you negatively and positively, then stay home. We don't need anybody out there just going to try to figure it out at the polls. We're not going to do that. Like, you see a bunch of people pulling up, and there you have people, oh, who are you voting for? We don't need them people. We need people who know what they want to do. And the only reason why I say that is because there was an election, and I'm not going to say which election, where there was a lot of younger people who thought it would just be funny to vote a president in. And then we ended up, and they were like, oh, we didn't think it was really going to happen. And then we were stuck with this particular person for 4 years. And that was really they thought it was a joke. It was like something that went on in line. Stay home. If you don't know by now, you will never know me.
You will
never know.
Listen.
And let me just give you an amen
Never
on
know.
that. Let me
Stay
just
home.
give you a big old amen on that, daughter. A big one.
Well, you guys. Well, for me, there's a asterisk that I want to put beside what Cole said, because I think people get confused when you say what happened. Like, I saw a lot of people that were like, oh, Roe v. Wade gets turned over while Biden's president, but then you have Trump outwardly claiming that he was responsible for that, because I think people don't understand that things take time. Like, something that might have been implemented in one presidency, now we'll feel the effects from it in the presidency to follow, and then people blame the current president for something that may have been implemented in the previous office. So that's what's so tough. I think that people are having a tough time deciphering. It's about, like, first of all, people I don't think know politics. And honestly, I think we all would be due to just have a lesson every year about conjunction, junction, what's your function? Like, I think that people, like,
a good civics class.
Yes, like, civics is not, like, we learn it, are you smarter than a fifth grader style. And then when we become adults, we know that who wins the are you smarter than a fifth grader competition. It ain't the adults competing against the fifth graders. The fifth graders know it and understand it. They not voting. So then when we talk about the Supreme Court and they're mad, like, well, why didn't the president do this? And it's like, no, baby, that's the Supreme Court's decision. Well, why does it's
and
like,
who appointed the Supreme Court?
Yes, and then it's like, it gets to the point where people, I think we need to understand better how government functions. Maybe so people can be mad at the right people. Like, you might need to be mad at your local government and not the president. But I don't think people know who to be
just
mad
like you
at.
see where people have called the president's office because they didn't get the trash picked up. Now, come on now. You don't know who's responsible for what.
President Biden got better things to worry about.
You don't know who's responsible for what.
Exactly. And that's a good point, because Donald Trump himself, and I don't even like saying the name, but we, for the purposes of this conversation, we have to, he said it himself. He said, I did that. I was responsible for overturning, or turned over, like Renee said, Roe v. Wade. And so I think that Renee is right. There's a lot of misplaced anger here. And I feel really strongly about this, because I have family members that are kind of in that same limbo of they don't know who to vote for, or Kamala's record this or this, and just like different reasons. But I don't think people realize that it wasn't that long ago that a lot of people couldn't vote, and people were fighting for our freedom and for our rights to vote. And I think that people tend to forget about that, because they think that it was like a long time ago or something like that, but it wasn't that long ago. And I think that people don't really know the power that they hold, and they say, oh, well, I'm just not going to vote for anybody, but you might as well give the vote to the other, to the other team, basically, because if you don't vote, people are going to vote for you. And so things are going to be decided anyway. And I think that that's what people need to realize, is that there isn't really an option. Either you don't vote and you get decided for, or you vote and you try to make a difference.
Well, and you hear some people talk about, we go on the record. Okay, so They said, well, she was a strong DA out there in California. I said, what do you mean by strong DA? Well, with the criminals and everything. I said, I said, are you planning on committing a crime? Is that why you don't want her in there? Because how can you be mad at
That
somebody who
cracks
put
me
somebody,
up.
because if somebody does something to somebody in my family, they better put him in jail. That's the best place for him. So, why would that
It cracks me up.
bother
That's a
you
good point,
that she
Snook.
was hard on criminals?
I think the thing is you got to pick a poison. Either you be mad, you're mad when people are saying anything negative about policing and police brutality and anything that involves policing, but then you also mad at people that are on the side of the government that are putting criminals away.
Right.
You got to pick a struggle. I also think in this grand sense of everything, I feel like the reason that there's such a conversation is there's so many people that are unhappy in their circumstances, and that's for whether it's for financially, recession, different things of that nature where they're struggling, like whether it's groceries, gas. And so when you're in a place of struggle, you do want to blame any and everybody. Right. And so it's understandable. I understand when people are mad, like, I don't know, because I was broke during the Trump administration and I'm broke during the Biden one. Like, I don't feel like nobody's helping me. I can understand that thought process, but you got to understand what they're saying for this. Snook, but you got to understand the solution. Like, that's why I think like people got to listen to who's going to get you to a closer solution. Like, yes, you might not be where you want. A lot of us, and
it's
even
like no candidate is perfect.
Nobody's going to be perfect, and like you're not going to like every single thing that a candidate says. That's unrealistic. So if you're looking for that, that's unrealistic. Even for me, if I was voting for the betterment of me, myself, and I should be Republican, because the things that Republicans are saying is going to benefit wealthy people, people that are above the 400,000.
You're telling your business, child. You're telling your business.
If that ain't you, I'm just saying, like, people that are making money, there's a reason that they're Republican, but there's a reason that I'm Democrat. It's because I don't vote just for myself. Like, I vote for like, I see that Democrats have a thought process where they want everybody to pay their fair share in taxes. They don't want to have tax breaks for the wealthy. I get that. Like, you know what I mean? So when you hear people that are wealthy saying that they're voting for a certain person, you have to just understand why. It's not misinformation. They do want to vote for this person. They are disregarding all the other things you may not like about this person. They know those things exist. Yes, they know the court cases. Yes, they know that you've been impeached. Yes, they know all of that. Right. But people will get confused that the one thing they're voting on is a one voter issue where it's like, I'm trying to get them tax breaks. I'm trying to save my money. Right. So if that ain't you, you got to vote for what's best for you.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'm talking about the people who have no interest in knowing.
Which is the question.
The people who have no interest in doing the work, who have had 8 solid years to figure out if you didn't like what was going on under this administration, what was not working for you. If you're undecided at this point and it is almost November, I would say I don't want these type of people running to the polls as a joke or to try to figure it out because you have not done the proper work.
Don't play games at the polls.
Exactly. So I don't want you playing Russian roulette because you just want to be cool. You should be knowing what you want to do before you get there. And I want everyone to vote. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying people should not vote. Yes, we have fought hard to be able to vote. I just don't want people who aren't taking it seriously to go to the polls and vote, because that hurts us worse when you go in there as a joke.
What you were saying,
I mean, I just think that there's a lot of there's a lack of education out there, and dang, I had a thought too, and I completely forgot because I'm so into what we were saying. But yeah, I just feel like people don't, like, to your point, Cole, they don't take the time to educate themselves, and I my point just came back to me. There's a lot of fear out there, like the people that I talk to who are undecided, they say, oh, well, they're teaching this to our kids in schools, or they're doing this and they're doing that. So I can understand, because, as a parent, like you're afraid for your kids, you're afraid for the future, you're afraid for your finances and things like that. So I feel like there's a lot of fear that's being spread, and they're they're playing up on people's fears. And I think that is, that's where people, that's what leads people to be undecided. But I was listening to the Steve Harvey morning show this morning, and he was saying that he can think of so many reasons why Kamala Harris is qualified. And that is the reason, he said it himself, that he's voting for Kamala Harris. But he can think of so many reasons why the other candidate is not qualified, and so we're not like trying to sway people like, hey, vote Democrat. But if you are voting Republican, then at least educate yourself and know why you're voting Republican,
And if you know, like, that's the point. If you know and you have a reason, that's what I was trying to say about, I was using the example of wealthy individuals, because then you have the Mark Cubans where he understands he is a billionaire with a B, and he's like, I'm about to gladly write my check to pay my fair share because I do think that I should pay my fair share. That's a thought process. Everybody's not going to want to be the good guy when it comes to paying money. But the main thing, I think, to answer your question, signed, I don't know, I think you need to find out. Like, basically, you need to try to find out, like, are there any things that you don't like in your life? Like, is it like, this is too high, this is too high? Locally, we got potholes everywhere. Why? I'm tired of it. I just got a flat tire. Like, what things in your world don't you like? If you're a woman, you got a lot of questions that you need to answer. Like, I just think, like, if this is a broad question, but if signed I don't know is a woman, you better find out. I hope you're a woman that maybe is not interested in having kids, because if so, there's going to be a lot of things where your choice is taken away. So the main thing I think that we're all trying to say is, I don't know. You better find out. And you got about, I don't know how many days, but early voting starting soon. November 5th is coming up rather quickly. We don't know the answer, but we know you need to find out.
And if you don't know, are you okay with other people deciding for you?
Yeah, like, I ain't letting nobody pick my dinner menu. Okay, so that's all we got for y'all this week. Again, it's vote week. We are really not trying to tell people who to vote for. I really do think that is your choice. Yes. The whole thing that we're trying to do is just make sure that you have your voice heard, whatever that voice may be. Get out and vote. All right, we'll be back with more Montgomery and Company. As always, we had a great time today at Montgomery and Company. And listen, in life, there's a lot of things that we can't control. Like, that can be very frustrating. Again, I'm an athlete. As an athlete, you always want to control your controllables. And then there's always things that you can't control, which is why we say in sports, it takes a little bit of luck. If people ever wonder, what does that even mean, where it takes a little bit of luck to win a championship? There's so many things you can't control in sports, but it does take luck along the way. Staying healthy, being, teams, players not getting traded, having a good shooting day, good shooting night. Like, these are things that you can't really control. You can practice all you want, and sometimes the ball don't go in. But something that you can control is voting. I know you're probably tired of, like, oh, I'm so sick of this voting stuff. Come on, man. Like, I'm sick of a lot of things too, but I want to do something to make them better. So if you're sick of hearing about blank, vote on an issue that can help it. If you're sick of having to deal with local potholes, well, maybe you need to vote local. Maybe you need to find out who's in charge of that. You got to find out what's bothering you, and then find out how you can control that and vote on an issue that helps you get there. So whether that's volunteering with an organization and doing important work in the community, I don't know what is for you going to be that thing that you want to control to get better. But all I'm saying is, in your life, control more of your controllables, and that includes voting. All right. So let this be a week that you take action, that you get in the game. Now, you already know what I mean by that. Time for you to get in the game. And that's all I got, man. I just appreciate being able to have a platform. Even me being able to talk to y'all right now is a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not necessarily, if you know me, then I'm not necessarily a person that loves talking about politics and like, oh yes, go out, get out the vote. But it's just like, I understand the importance of it. So we got to do it. I feel like it's almost irresponsible of me to have this platform and to not at least make people that may listen to us aware that, yes, voting's coming up. I hope you're already registered, and I hope you make your voice heard. There was a lot of people that had to fight to even be able to vote. And listen, shouts to Round 21, because my shirt right now says, my vote is the only thing stronger than my game. Okay. So y'all got to make your voice heard, man. Shouts to Round 21. And that might be true. I'm 100% in the booth. Okay. I'm 100% in the booth. All right. That's all we got for y'all this week. I appreciate y'all joining us for another episode of Montgomery and Company. I'm Renee Montgomery. We'll see y'all next time. Thank y'all for joining us for this episode of Montgomery and Company. Remember, if you've got a question for the MoCo mailbag, send it to us at moco@wabe.org or at Montgomery Co Pod on Instagram. This show is produced by Think Tank Productions in collaboration with WABE. Our executive producers are Amena Brown, Scotty Crowe, and Sirena Grace. Audio production is by Kevin Rinker and Matt Owen. Video by Ariel Brown, Greg Harding Films, and Ryshad Pitts. Until next time, I'm Renee Montgomery, and this is MoCo, where it's all sports, culture, and family business.
WABE.